12-year-old Eli Parker arrived at Oak Ridge Middle School with the quiet discipline of a soldier's son, standing straight, speaking with respect, calling adults sir and ma'am, like his mother had taught him. But his politeness was seen as arrogance, his composure as defiance, and Ms. Greene, a teacher with a smile that never reached her eyes, decided this respectful black boy needed to be put in his place. What began as deliberately mispronouncing his name spiraled into weeks of systematic humiliation, public punishments, and false accusations that no one believed. While Eli endured in silence, honoring his mother's teachings about standing tall, what none of them knew was that his mother wasn't just some distant figure in uniform. She was a 4-star general, and when she finally learned what was happening to her son, she would bring a storm that would shake the entire school to its foundation. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today, and if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed. The alarm clock hadn't even gone off yet when Eli Parker opened his eyes. Dawn was just beginning to paint the sky in shades of purple and orange, and the 12-year-old boy was already awake, his internal clock as precise as any military timepiece. He sat up in bed, listening to the familiar sounds of his mother moving around the house. There was something different about this morning, though. Something final. Eli found her in the living room, dressed in her crisp army uniform, carefully folding clothes into her duffel bag. General Naomi Parker moved with the efficiency of someone who had packed a deployment bag hundreds of times before. Her dark skin caught the early morning light, and her expression was calm, focused. But Eli knew his mother well enough to see the slight tension around her eyes. "Morning, soldier," she said without looking up, a small smile tugging at her lips. "Morning, Mom," Eli replied, moving to help her. He grabbed her folded socks and placed them neatly in the side pocket of the bag, just the way she liked it. They worked in comfortable silence for a few minutes, the kind of teamwork that comes from years of practice. Naomi reached for her toiletry kit, then paused, turning to face her son fully. "I'll be back before graduation," she said, her voice firm but gentle. "That's a promise, Eli. I wouldn't miss it for anything." Eli nodded, swallowing hard. "I know, Mom. I'll be okay." She pulled him into a tight hug, and for just a moment, she wasn't a 4-star general. She was just his mother, holding on a little longer than usual. When she pulled back, she looked him straight in the eye. "You remember what I always tell you. Stand tall. Always," Eli recited. "That's right. No matter what happens, you keep your head up and your standards high." "Understood." "Yes, ma'am." 2 hours later, Eli stood at the entrance of Oak Ridge Middle School, his backpack slung over one shoulder, staring up at the red brick building. It looked like every other school he had attended over the years, which was to say, it looked temporary. Military families moved often, and Eli had learned not to get too attached to any one place. But this was supposed to be different. His mother had assured him they would be here for at least 2 years, maybe more. Long enough to actually finish middle school in one place. The main office smelled like coffee and copy machine ink. A secretary with bright red reading glasses glanced up at him, then back down at her computer screen. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone more bored than welcoming. "I'm Eli Parker. Today's my first day. I'm supposed to check in with Principal Collins." She clicked her mouse a few times, frowning at the screen. "Oh, right. The transfer student. Have a seat. He'll be with you in a minute." Eli sat in one of the plastic chairs along the wall, his posture straight, hands resting on his knees. His mother had taught him that how you carried yourself mattered. It told people who you were before you ever opened your mouth. 15 minutes passed, then 20. Students rushed past the office windows, laughing and shoving each other, completely at ease in their familiar environment. Eli watched them, feeling the familiar weight of being the outsider. Finally, a tall man with thinning hair and a loosened tie emerged from an inner office. Principal Collins had the distracted air of someone perpetually behind schedule. "Eli Parker?" he asked, though he was already turning back toward his office, clearly expecting Eli to follow. "Yes, sir," Eli replied, standing quickly. Collins glanced back at the sir, a flicker of something crossing his face. Amusement? Surprise? It was gone too quickly for Eli to tell. In the office, Collins shuffled through papers on his desk, eventually pulling out a thin folder. Transfer from Fort Jackson, South Carolina. Military family, I see. Your mother is. He squinted at the form. In the Army? Yes, sir. She's a general. Collins looked up at that, eyebrows raised. A general. That's impressive. The words sounded hollow, like he was reading from script. Well, we're happy to have you here at Oak Ridge. Your schedule is right here. Mrs. Jenkins will show you to your homeroom. The secretary appeared in the doorway as if summoned. Come on, sweetheart, she said, already walking away. Eli grabbed his schedule and hurried after her, noticing how Principal Collins had already turned back to his computer, the conversation clearly over. No welcome, no questions about how he was settling in, no orientation. Just the bare minimum and a dismissal. Mrs. Jenkins dropped him off at room 214 without a word, pointing at the door and walking away before Eli could even thank her. He stood in the hallway for a moment, gathering himself, then knocked. Come in, called a voice from inside. The classroom fell silent as Eli entered. 25 pairs of eyes turned to look at him, and he felt his stomach tighten. At the front of the room, a woman in her 40s with sharp features and an even sharper expression looked him up and down. You must be our new student, she said, her voice carrying a strange tone. Not quite welcoming, not quite hostile. Something in between. Yes, ma'am. I'm Eli Parker. Eli Parker, she said, mispronouncing it with a hard emphasis on the second syllable. It's Parker, ma'am, like someone who parks a car. A few students giggled. Ms. Greene's eyes narrowed slightly. Park here, she repeated, somehow making it sound even more wrong. We have students from all over here. Sometimes the names can be quite different. Eli's face grew warm. It's just Parker, ma'am. Regular pronunciation. Well, I think Park here is easier for everyone to remember, Ms. Greene said with a tight smile. Why don't you take that empty seat in the back, Park here? The class erupted in snickers and whispers. Eli walked to his assigned seat, his jaw clenched, feeling the heat of embarrassment crawling up his neck. He sat down carefully, placing his backpack beside his chair and folding his hands on the desk, just like he had been taught. Class, this is Eli Park here, Ms. Greene announced, still getting his name wrong. He come from military family, so I expect you all to help him adjust to how we do things here at Oak Ridge. I'm sure it's quite different from base schools. Eli wanted to correct her again, wanted to explain that his name was Parker, not Park here, that it wasn't complicated at all. But something in Ms. Greene's expression told him that further protest would only make things worse. So he sat silently, nodding when appropriate, and tried to ignore the whispers around him. The rest of the morning was a blur of introductions and awkward stares. In each class, teachers mispronounced his name or made small comments about military families being transient or used to strict environments. By lunchtime, Eli felt exhausted, and the day was only half over. He had learned from experience that the cafeteria was its own battlefield. Social hierarchies were on full display, and as the new kid, he had no clear place in any of them. He grabbed a tray, selected a sad-looking slice of pizza and an apple, and scanned the room for an empty spot. That's when he noticed them. 3 boys sitting at a corner table, all wearing matching athletic warm-up jackets. The one in the middle, a tall kid with sandy blonde hair and an easy confidence, was holding court, making his friends laugh at something. As Eli walked past, trying to find an empty seat, the boy's eyes locked onto him. Hey, check it out, the boy said loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. We got a new recruit. His friends laughed. Eli kept walking, pretending he hadn't heard. I'm talking to you, soldier boy, the kid called out. Stand at attention when someone addresses you. Eli stopped, taking a slow breath. He turned, keeping his expression neutral. My name's Eli. I'm Connor, the boy said, leaning back in his chair with an arrogant grin. And you walk funny, like you got to stick up your back. More laughter rippled through the nearby tables. Eli felt his face flush, but kept his voice level. I'm just trying to find a place to sit. Yeah, well, maybe try the kiddie tables, one of Connor's friends chimed in. This is where the real students sit. Eli turned away without responding and found an empty table near the windows. He sat down, focusing on his food, trying to block out the continued laughter and whispers. This was familiar territory. New school, same story. The military kid who talked different, acted different, didn't know the unwritten rules. He was halfway through his pizza when someone slid into the seat across from him. "Don't let them get to you," said a girl with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and warm brown eyes that held both sympathy and understanding. Connor's like that with anyone who doesn't kiss up to him. Eli looked up, surprised. "Thanks. I'm Eli." "Sophia," she said, offering a small smile. "Sophia Reyes. I saw what happened in Greene's class this morning. She does that sometimes. Gets names wrong on purpose to make new kids feel small." "You think she did it on purpose?" Sophia raised an eyebrow. "Parker isn't exactly a hard name to pronounce. Trust me, I've had teachers do the same thing with Reyes. They act like our names are impossible to say correctly." Something loosened in Eli's chest. Here was someone who understood, who had experienced the same subtle cruelty. "How long have you been here?" 2 years. It gets better. Sort of. Sophia took a bite of her sandwich, then added, "But it also stays the same in some ways. Some teachers here, they have their favorites. And they have their targets." "Let me guess," Eli said quietly. "I'm going to be a target." "Maybe. But you seem like you can handle it. You got this calm thing going on. Like nothing really rattles you." If only she knew how much effort that calm required. How many times he had practiced keeping his composure when kids mocked the way he stood, or the way he spoke, or the fact that he called adults sir and ma'am. His mother had taught him that discipline was its own kind of armor. The afternoon classes were no better than the morning. In math, Eli finished his worksheet 15 minutes before everyone else. He double-checked his work, then sat quietly, waiting for instructions. Ms. Greene circled the room, stopping at his desk. She picked up his paper, her eyes scanning the completed problems. "You think you're finished?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am. I checked it twice." "Showing off for the class, Mr. Park here." Her voice was sharp. Several students looked over. "No, ma'am. I just finished the assignment." "Well, since you have so much extra time and energy," Ms. Greene said, walking back to her desk and grabbing another worksheet, "you can do this one too. Maybe next time you'll focus on quality over speed." She dropped the additional assignment on his desk with a pointed look. The class had gone completely silent, watching the exchange. Eli felt humiliation burn in his chest, but he picked up his pencil without protest. "Thank you, ma'am," he said quietly. As Ms. Greene walked away, he heard Connor whisper loudly enough to be heard, "Guess the Army doesn't teach you when to slow down, huh?" More suppressed laughter followed. Eli bent his head over the extra work and began solving the problems, his jaw tight, his handwriting precise and controlled. This was what his mother meant by standing tall. You didn't let them see you break. You didn't give them the satisfaction. That evening, alone in his room, Eli sat at his desk and pulled out his phone. He wanted to text his mother, to tell her about the day, about Ms. Greene and Connor, and the way his name had become a weapon. But he knew she was in transit, probably somewhere over the Atlantic by now, heading toward responsibilities he couldn't even imagine. Instead, he opened his drawer and took out the small insignia tag she had given him before her last deployment. It was from her first uniform, decades old, worn smooth by time and touch. He turned it over in his fingers, feeling its weight, its history. "Stand tall," he whispered to himself. Always. Outside his window, the sky was darkening. In the distance, he could see Oak Ridge Middle School, its flag still flying even as evening fell. Lightning flickered on the horizon, promising a storm. Eli set the insignia tag on his desk where he could see it, a reminder that he came from strength, even when he felt small. The new day hadn't improved anything. If anything, it had gotten worse. Eli had arrived at school early, a habit ingrained from years of military base living. While other students were still stumbling off buses, he had already cleaned his desk, organized his materials, and was reviewing his homework. The classroom was peaceful in those early minutes, almost pleasant. Then Ms. Greene walked in. She stopped when she saw him, her expression shifting from neutral to something resembling contempt. "You're here early," she observed, setting her coffee down with deliberate slowness. "Yes, ma'am. I like to be prepared." Prepared. she repeated, a strange smile playing at her lips. Or are you trying to be janitor of the month? Because I assure you, Mr. Park here, we have people for that. The comment hit him like a slap. Eli felt his face grow hot, but he kept his expression carefully blank. I was just organizing my desk, ma'am. Hum. She turned away, dismissing him entirely. As other students began filtering in, Connor was among the first to arrive. He must have heard the exchange, because he immediately picked up on it. Yo, Parker, he called out, deliberately mispronouncing the name, just like Miss Greene. You trying out for janitor? My dad could probably get you an application. His friends erupted in laughter as they entered behind him. Eli said nothing, just opened his textbook and pretended to read. But he could feel their eyes on him, could hear their whispered jokes. The day had barely started, and he already felt defeated. History class was third period. Mr. Brennan, a jovial man with a bushy mustache, was reviewing a unit on American families through the decades. As a closing activity, he asked students to share something about their own family structures. I'll start, Mr. Brennan said cheerfully. My wife is a nurse. We have 3 kids, and our house is complete chaos. Who's next? Hands shot up around the room. Students talked about their siblings, their parents' jobs, their family traditions. When Eli raised his hand, Mr. Brennan looked genuinely pleased. Eli, welcome. Tell us about your family. It's just me and my mom, sir, Eli began, his voice steady. She's in the Army. She's a general. Actually, she just deployed yesterday. A general. Mr. Brennan looked impressed. That's quite an accomplishment. You must be very proud. Before Eli could respond, Ms. Greene's voice cut through the room. She had been standing in the doorway, apparently dropping off some paperwork, but now she stepped fully into the classroom. A general, she repeated, her tone dripping with something ugly. Well, that explains the attitude. Must be pretty strict at home. Huh? All that military discipline. The class erupted in laughter. Even Mr. Brennan looked uncomfortable, clearly unsure how to respond to a fellow teacher's comment. Eli felt his stomach drop. He had mentioned his mother with pride, wanting to honor her accomplishment, and Ms. Greene had twisted it into something shameful. My mom is a good person, Eli said quietly, but his voice was lost in the laughter. Ms. Greene smirked and walked away, leaving Mr. Brennan to awkwardly transition to the next student. But the damage was done. For the rest of class, Eli felt eyes on him, heard whispers about military moms and strict soldiers. Connor made a show of sitting up straight and saluting whenever he caught Eli's eye. The science fair project was announced at the end of the week. Students would work in groups of 4 to design an experiment demonstrating a principle of physics. Ms. Greene assigned the groups herself, and Eli's heart sank when he heard his name paired with Connor, Tyler, and Brad. This will be perfect, Connor said with false enthusiasm when they gathered to plan. Parker can do all the work, right? Since you're so good at following orders. We should all contribute, Eli said carefully. The project is worth 20% of our grade. Yeah, well, you contribute, Tyler said, slouching in his chair. We'll supervise. That's how the military works, right? Officers and grunts. They laughed at their own joke. Eli tried to discuss experiment ideas, but they talked over him, eventually settling on a half-baked plan involving pulleys and weights. When Eli suggested modifications to make it actually work, they ignored him completely. Over the next 2 weeks, Eli ended up doing most of the project alone. His group members wouldn't respond to his texts, didn't show up for the plan meetings, and contributed nothing to the research or construction. He built the entire demonstration himself, staying up late to make sure it would actually function correctly. The day of the presentation, Connor and his friends showed up with smug grins. Don't mess this up, Parker, Connor warned under his breath. We're all counting on you. The presentation went well. Their pulley system worked perfectly, lifting weights with minimal force, demonstrating mechanical advantage clearly. But when Ms. Greene asked about the research process, Connor immediately jumped in. Parker did most of the building, he said, which was true, but we had to redo a lot of his calculations. He kept messing up the math. Eli's head snapped up. That's not true, ma'am. I can show you my notes. The demonstration works, Ms. Greene interrupted, but clearly there were collaboration issues. I'm giving the group A B minus. Maybe next time, Mr. Park here, you'll learn to work better with others. But do you want me to make it a C? Eli closed his mouth, his hands shaking with frustration and anger. Connor and his friends exchanged triumphant glances. They had sabotaged him, and somehow he was the one being punished for it. After class, Eli went straight to Principal Collins's office. "I need to report something," he told the secretary. "Is it an emergency?" "It's about a grade I received unfairly." The secretary sighed. "Principal Collins doesn't typically get involved in grade disputes. That's between you and your teacher. But my group members didn't do any work, and I'm being punished for their lack of collaboration. And you have proof of this?" Eli faltered. He had texts they hadn't responded to, but that didn't prove they hadn't contributed in other ways. He had his own notes and research, but Connor's lie about the calculations was his word against theirs. "I'll see if he has time," the secretary finally said, more out of pity than anything else. 10 minutes later, Eli sat across from Principal Collins, tried to explain the situation. Collins listened with an expression of barely concealed impatience. "So you're upset about AB minus?" Collins said when Eli finished. "I'm upset about being blamed for something I didn't do, sir, and about my group members getting credit for work they didn't complete." Collins leaned back in his chair. "Eli, group projects are difficult. They require compromise and teamwork. Sometimes it's better to fit than to make waves. If you keep complaining about your classmates and teachers, people are going to think you're a troublemaker." The words hit Eli harder than any insult Connor had thrown at him. The principal was telling him to accept injustice, to bow his head, and take the punishment for something he hadn't done. "I understand, sir," Eli said quietly, standing up. "Thank you for your time." He walked out of the office feeling more alone than ever. In the hallway, he nearly ran into Sophia. "Hey, you okay?" she asked, noticing his expression. "Just try to report what happened with the science project." "Let me guess. Collins told you to let it go." "Pretty much." Sophia's jaw tightened. "That's what he does. Last year, when I reported that a teacher gave me detention for speaking Spanish to another student during lunch, he told my parents I was being too sensitive." She looked at Eli with fierce determination. "You shouldn't stay silent about this stuff. Your mom wouldn't let this slide. She's got real battles to fight," Eli said, echoing the thought he had been telling himself for days. "I can handle this one." "Can you, though?" Sophia challenged. "Because from where I'm standing, they're winning." Eli didn't have an answer to that. The next Monday, Eli opened his locker to find graffiti scrawled across the inside in permanent marker. "Private Parker" on one side, "Yes, sir," on the other, with a crude drawing of a soldier saluting. His stomach dropped. He stood there, staring at the words, feeling a mix of anger and humiliation. Other students passed by, some pointing and laughing, others averting their eyes in embarrassment. He reported it immediately to Ms. Greene, who was on hallway duty that morning. "Someone vandalized my locker," he said, showing her. She glanced at it without much interest. "Are you sure you didn't do it yourself?" Eli stared at her in disbelief. "Why would I do that, ma'am?" "Attention, maybe. Some students like to create drama to make themselves feel important." "I don't want attention, ma'am. I want my locker cleaned." "I'll submit a maintenance request," she said dismissively. "In the meantime, maybe think about why someone might feel the need to do this. Usually, it's a response to behavior." She walked away, leaving Eli standing in front of his defaced locker, feeling like he had been punched in the gut. She was blaming him for being bullied, making it his fault. The maintenance request took 3 days to process. For 3 days, Eli had to open his locker and see those words, those drawings, while other students snickered and made jokes. The final blow came during a math test 2 weeks later. Eli had studied hard, worked through every practice problem, and felt confident as he completed the exam. He finished with 10 minutes to spare and used the time to check his work carefully. When Ms. Greene collected the papers, she paused at his desk. "Finished early again, Mr. Park here?" "Yes, ma'am." She picked up his test, her eyes scanning the answers. Her expression darkened. "These answers are very precise. Almost too precise. A study, ma'am. Or maybe you looked at your neighbor's paper. These scores are suspiciously perfect." Eli felt ice run through his veins. I didn't cheat, ma'am. Then you won't mind if I give you a different version of the test to complete. Right now, during your lunch period. But I didn't. Detention, Mr. Park here. Today, I don't tolerate dishonesty in my classroom. The class murmured with surprise and speculation. Eli sat frozen in his seat, unable to believe what was happening. She was accusing him of cheating because his answers were correct, because he had done well. Yes, ma'am, he finally managed to say. Detention was held in the library after school. Eli sat alone at a table while other students came and went, serving their various sentences. The librarian barely looked at him, just pointed to a chair and went back to her computer. After about 30 minutes, an elderly black man pushing a cleaning cart entered the library. He was wearing a janitor's uniform, and his name tag read James Harlan. He moved slowly but deliberately, emptying trash cans and wiping down surfaces. When he reached Eli's table, he paused. You doing all right there, son? Eli looked up, surprised to be addressed. Yes, sir. Just serving detention. Mr. Harlan's eyes were kind, but knowing. What did you do? Got accused of cheating on a test. But I didn't. I studied and did well. And my teacher didn't believe it was my own work. The janitor nodded slowly, as if this confirmed something he had already suspected. Been watching you these past few weeks. You carry yourself with respect. Stand straight. Say your yes, sirs, and no, ma'ams. You got military family. My mom's a general in the Army. A general. Mr. Harlan smiled. That's something. I was in the service myself. Marines. Retired years ago. He leaned on his cart, studying Eli carefully. Let me tell you something, son. I've seen this before. People who don't like what you represent. They'll push and push, trying to get you to break, to act out, to prove their assumptions right. So what do? Don't let them break your bearings, son. You keep standing tall, just like you've been doing. It's harder than fighting back, I know, but it's the right thing. He resumed cleaning, but added over his shoulder, and remember, people are watching. Not just the ones who want to see you fail. That night, Eli couldn't hold it together anymore. Alone in his room, he finally let the tears come. He clutched his mother's challenge coin, the one she had given him before leaving, and let himself feel everything he had been holding back. The humiliation, the anger, the loneliness, the unfairness of it all. His phone buzzed. A text from his mother. Stand tall. Always. She couldn't have known what he was going through at that exact moment. The message was just her regular check-in, sent whenever she had signal. But the timing felt like providence. Eli wiped his tears, took a deep breath, and typed back, Yes, ma'am. He set the phone down and stared at the ceiling. Somewhere across an ocean, his mother was probably dealing with situations he couldn't comprehend. Real danger, real stakes. And here he was, crying over middle school teachers and bullies. But then he thought about what Mr. Harlan had said, about not breaking, about keeping his bearing. Maybe this was his battle. Maybe it mattered just as much as the ones his mother fought. Across town, in her small apartment, Ms. Greene sat at her laptop, composing yet another email to Principal Collins. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she detailed Eli's continued behavioral problems, his difficulty accepting authority, and his disruptive presence in the classroom. She hit send with satisfaction, never once considering that her emails were automatically forwarded to the district office, where they were reviewed by a family liaison coordinator who had connections to the military base. She never imagined that her words were building a paper trail that would eventually find their way to someone who would actually read them carefully, someone who would not take kindly to what they revealed. The storm was coming. Ms. Greene just didn't know it yet. The cafeteria detention and constant scrutiny had become Eli's new normal over the following weeks. He had learned to keep his head down, to double-check every assignment, to avoid giving Ms. Greene any excuse to single him out. But then came the announcement that shattered his fragile peace. Field Day was approaching. Oak Ridge Middle School's annual Field Day was legendary. Students competed in various outdoor activities, earned points for their homerooms, and celebrated with ice cream and music. Eli had hoped it might be a chance to blend in, maybe even enjoy himself for once. That hope died the moment Ms. Greene posted the duty assignments. While the rest of his homeroom was assigned to relay races, tug-of-war, and obstacle courses, Eli's name appeared under a single category: logistics and cleanup crew. "Looks like you got the perfect job. Park here," Ms. Greene announced during morning announcements, her voice carrying across the classroom. "Someone has to handle logistics. And since you're a little soldier, I figured you'd appreciate supporting the mission from behind the scenes." The class snickered. Connor raised his hand with mock seriousness. "Ms. Greene, shouldn't he at least get a uniform for his assignment? Maybe a little orange vest?" The laughter grew louder. Eli stared at his desk, his jaw clenched so tight it ached. He wanted to protest, to point out that every other student got to participate in actual events. But he knew it would only make things worse. Field day arrived under brilliant blue skies. The school's backfield had been transformed with colorful banners, inflatable obstacles, and tables laden with refreshments. Students buzzed with excitement, wearing their team colors and warming up for competitions. Eli stood near the supply tent in his regular clothes, holding a clipboard and a trash bag. "Hey, Parker!" Connor jogged over with his friends, all of them wearing matching red team shirts. "Make sure you keep our area clean, okay? We're going for the championship, and we can't have trash distracting us." Tyler tossed an empty water bottle directly at Eli's feet. "Oops, better pick that up, janitor boy." They ran off laughing. Eli bent down and picked up the bottle, his face burning with humiliation. Around him, other students were stretching, strategizing, laughing with their friends. He was invisible except when someone needed something thrown away or a table moved. Ms. Greene appeared periodically to bark orders. "Eli, move those chairs. Eli, we need more cups at Station 3. Eli, stop standing around. Never park here now. Just Eli," snapped out like a command to a servant. Midway through the day, during the relay races, Connor's team was winning. The crowd cheered as he sprinted toward the finish line, his face flushed with triumph. As he crossed, he spotted Eli carrying a crate of water bottles toward the refreshment table. An idea seemed to spark in Connor's eyes. He jogged over to his friends, whispered something, and they all burst out laughing. Then Connor straightened up, puffed out his chest, and marched directly toward Eli with exaggerated military precision. "Attend HUT," Connor barked, stopping right in front of Eli and saluting dramatically. "Private Parker reporting for duty, SIR." His friends joined in, forming a mock formation around Eli. "Yes, SIR. No, SIR. Whatever you say, SIR." Students began gathering, phones coming out. Someone started filming. The humiliation wasn't just happening anymore. It was being documented, preserved, turned into entertainment. "Stand down, soldier," Tyler yelled, barely containing his laughter. "You're out of uniform." Eli tried to walk away, to remove himself from the situation, but Connor sidestepped into his path. The crate of water bottles shifted in Eli's arms, unbalanced. He stumbled, trying to catch his footing, and the entire crate tipped forward. Water bottles cascaded across the ground, several of them rolling directly toward where Ms. Greene stood talking to another teacher. One bottle hit her foot. Another splashed water on her white sneakers. The laughter stopped immediately. Ms. Greene whirled around, her face contorted with rage. She stormed toward Eli, who was already kneeling to gather the scattered bottles. "What do you think you're doing?" she hissed, her voice low but venomous. "I'm sorry, Mom. I tripped in." "You're disrespectful," she shouted, loud enough now for everyone to hear. "Do you think this is funny? Disrupting the entire event? Making a spectacle of yourself?" "Ma'am, I didn't mean to." She grabbed his arm, yanking him upward. Her fingers dug into his bicep. "You're going to stand right here, in this spot, until field day is over. You're going to think about your behavior and your attitude." But they were Eli started to explain about Connor and the mock drill sergeant routine, but Ms. Greene cut him off. "I don't want to hear excuses. Stand here. Don't move. Don't speak. Just stand." She positioned him in the middle of the field, fully exposed to the sun and to the stares of every passing student. It was a public punishment designed to humiliate. Eli stood there, his arms at his sides, his face burning with more than just heat. Around him, field day continued. Students competed, cheered, celebrated. He was a statue of shame in the middle of their joy. 20 feet away, partially hidden by a group of younger students, Sophia stood with her phone out. Her hands trembled as she recorded the scene, capturing Ms. Greene's shouting, Eli's silent humiliation, and the crowd of students taking photos. Tears streamed down her face, but she kept filming. When she finally stopped recording, she approached Eli carefully, staying just out of Ms. Greene's line of sight. "I got it," she whispered. "I got everything on video." Eli's eyes widened. "Sophia, delete it. If they find out you recorded this, they'll come after you too." "I don't care," she said fiercely. "This is wrong. Everyone needs to see what they're doing to you." "Please," Eli begged. "Just delete it." Sophia shook her head. "I'm not deleting it, but I won't post it without asking you first. I promise." She slipped her phone into her pocket and walked away before Ms. Greene noticed. Eli stood in the sun for another 90 minutes. By the time field day ended, his head was pounding, his mouth was dry, and his legs ached. But worse than any physical discomfort was the crushing weight of humiliation. He had been reduced to a thing, a punishment, a warning to others about what happens when you don't fit in. The next morning, Principal Collins called him into the office. Eli sat in the same chair he had occupied weeks earlier, but this time the principal's expression was harder, less patient. "We need to talk about your behavior at field day," Collins began. "My behavior?" Eli couldn't help the note of disbelief in his voice. "Ms. Greene reported that you deliberately disrupted the event, damaged school property, and showed blatant disrespect to staff. This is the third incident report I've received about you this semester." "Those reports aren't true, sir. I've been—" "Eli, I'm going to give you some advice." Collins leaned forward, his tone taking on a false kindness. "Sometimes the problem isn't everyone else. Sometimes the problem is us. We have to look at our own behavior and ask what we're doing to create these situations." The words landed like stones. Eli felt something crack inside him, the careful composure he had maintained for weeks finally fracturing. "You don't even see what's happening," he said, his voice shaking. "You don't see how they treat me, what they say, what they do. You just see what you want to see." Collins's expression hardened. "That tone is exactly what I'm talking about. One more outburst, one more incident report, and we'll be discussing suspension. Do you understand?" Eli stood up, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "I understand perfectly, sir." He walked out of the office, past the secretary's pitying look, into the hallway where students rushed between classes. He felt hollowed out, like everything he had been taught about fairness and justice had been revealed as a lie. Lunchtime brought another small cruelty. Eli was standing in line at the cafeteria when Mrs. Patterson, one of the lunch workers, made a comment just loud enough for him to hear. "These military kids," she muttered to her coworker, "think they're better than everyone else. Think they deserve special treatment." Eli Parker. He hadn't asked for special treatment. He had asked for basic fairness, basic respect. But in their eyes, even that was too much. He grabbed his tray without responding and found Sophia at their usual table. She took one look at his face and knew something had broken. "What happened?" "Collins threatened me with suspension." "For what?" "For existing, apparently." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Sophia said quietly, "I'm going to post the video." "Sophia, no." "Yes. This has gone too far. People need to see the truth." Before Eli could argue further, Mr. Harlan appeared at their table with his cleaning cart. He nodded at Sophia, then turned his attention to Eli. "Got a minute, son?" They walked to a quiet corner of the cafeteria. Mr. Harlan's expression was grave. "I've been watching what's been happening to you, and I've kept quiet because I thought maybe you could handle it. Maybe it would pass. But yesterday, seeing you standing in that field like that..." He shook his head. "That wasn't discipline. That was cruelty. I don't know what to do," Eli admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "You don't have to do anything." "But I do." Mr. Harlan pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket. "I'm taking this to the base gates tonight, making sure it gets to your mother. Mr. Harlan, she's deployed. She has important. Nothing is more important than this, son. Trust me on that." The old Marine's eyes were fierce. "I served 30 years. I know what honor looks like, and I know what cowardice looks like. What's happening here is cowardice, plain and simple. Your mother needs to know." That evening, True to his word, Mr. Harlan drove to the base entrance. The guard on duty recognized him as a regular, someone who occasionally did maintenance work for military families. Harlan handed over the sealed envelope addressed to General Naomi Parker. "This is urgent," he said. "Family matter." The guard nodded and logged it into the system. It would be forwarded through proper channels, tagged as priority due to the general's rank. Meanwhile, at a forward operating base thousands of miles away, General Naomi Parker sat in a secure briefing room reviewing strategic reports. Her phone buzzed with a priority message from the base family liaison office. She excused herself and stepped into the hallway to read it. The message was brief but troubling. "Multiple reports of incidents involving your son Eli at Oak Ridge Middle School. Formal complaints filed. Request you contact school administration at earliest convenience." Attached was Mr. Harlan's note, which had been scanned and forwarded. "General Parker, I'm a Marine veteran working at your son's school. What I've witnessed happening to that boy isn't right. He's standing tall like you taught him, but they're trying to break him. He needs his mother." Naomi read it 3 times, her jaw tightening with each pass. She walked directly to her commanding officer's quarters and knocked. "Ma'am, I need to request a 48-hour emergency leave." Her CO, Colonel Brenda Shaw, looked up from her paperwork. She had served with Naomi for 15 years and knew her well enough to recognize the controlled fury in her eyes. "What's happened?" "My son is being bullied and mistreated at his school. The administration is complicit. I need to handle this personally." Colonel Shaw didn't hesitate. "Request approved. Take 72 hours if you need it." "And, General," she met Naomi's eyes. "Give them hell." "Yes, ma'am." Back at Oak Ridge Middle School, unaware of the storm gathering on the horizon, Connor and his friends huddled around a phone during study hall. They had created a meme using photos from field day, showing Eli's humiliation with cruel captions. Within minutes, it was shared across multiple group chats. "This is going to get so many likes," Tyler said, scrolling through the comments. The memes spread quickly, appearing on students' phones throughout the afternoon. Some laughed, some cringed, but most stayed silent. By the end of the school day, the images had reached parents' social media feeds as well. At home that evening, Eli sat in his room, unaware of the digital mockery spreading through his school community. His phone buzzed occasionally with notifications, but he had learned to ignore them. Most were just reminders of his isolation anyway. He was reviewing homework when his phone rang with an unfamiliar number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Eli, it's Mom." His heart leapt. "Mom? Where are you? Are you okay?" "I'm fine, baby. But we need to talk about what's been going on at school." Eli's stomach dropped. "How did you?" "Someone at your school reached out. A Mr. Harlan. He told me what's been happening." Her voice was calm, but Eli could hear the steel beneath it. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you're deployed. You have real problems to deal with. I didn't want to be another burden." "Eli Marcus Parker, you listen to me." Her general's voice came through now, the one that commanded respect from colonels and captains. "You are never, ever a burden. You are my son, and your battles are my battles. Do you understand me?" "Yes, ma'am. I'm coming home. I'll be there tomorrow evening." "And Eli, don't let them see you break." "Not now. Stand tall, just a little bit longer." "Can you do that for me?" "Yes, ma'am. That's my soldier. I love you." "I love you too, Mom." As Naomi ended the call and began preparing for her journey home, her convoy was already being arranged. A military transport would take her to the nearest airfield, then a hop on a cargo plane back to the States, followed by a drive to Oak Ridge. Every minute was being calculated, every second of travel time optimized. The storm wasn't coming anymore. It was already on its way. Morning arrived at Oak Ridge Middle School with the usual chaos of lockers slamming, students gossiping, and teachers clutching their coffee cups like lifelines. The rumor mill was particularly active in the teacher's lounge. "Did you hear we're supposed to have a guest speaker for Career Day next week?" Mrs. Patterson asked, stirring artificial sweetener into her coffee. "Another boring presentation about accounting," someone groaned. "Actually," Principal Collins said, walking in with a smug expression, "it's someone from the military. A high-ranking officer. Supposed to be very impressive." Ms. Greene glanced up from her phone, where she had been scrolling through the Eli Parker memes that students had created. Maybe she'll teach these kids some discipline. God knows they could use it. The teachers chuckled, completely unaware that the officer in question had no intention of waiting until career day. At that exact moment, a black SUV with government plates pulled into the visitor parking lot. The engine cut off, and for a moment, everything was still. Then the driver's door opened, and General Naomi Parker stepped out. She was in her full dress uniform, the kind reserved for formal ceremonies and official business. 4 stars gleamed on her shoulders, catching the morning sunlight. Her shoes were polished to a mirror shine. Her posture was ramrod straight, and her expression was one of controlled purpose. She looked exactly like what she was, someone who commanded thousands of soldiers and who was not accustomed to being ignored or dismissed. She walked through the front entrance, her footsteps echoing in the hallway with military precision. Students who passed her stopped mid-conversation, their eyes going wide. Teachers froze in doorways. There was something in her bearing that demanded attention, that communicated authority without a single word being spoken. The front office secretary looked up from her computer and nearly dropped her coffee. Can I help you?" she stammered. "I'm here to see Principal Collins," Naomi said, her voice polite but carrying the unmistakable weight of command. "I'm General Naomi Parker. My son is Eli Parker." The secretary's face went pale. Let me see if he's available." "He's available," Naomi said, not as a question, but as a statement of fact. She was right. 2 minutes later, Principal Collins emerged from his inner office, his professional smile already in place. But when he saw the 4 stars, the smile faltered. "General Parker," he said, extending his hand. "We weren't expecting you until career day next week." Naomi shook his hand with a grip that made him wince slightly. "Plans changed. I'm here about my son, Eli. We need to talk about his treatment at this school." Collins's smile became more strained. "Of course. Let's step into my office where we can speak privately." "Actually," Naomi said, her tone making it clear this wasn't a negotiation, "I'd like to visit his classroom first. I prefer to see unfiltered environments, get a sense of the day-to-day reality." Before Collins could protest, she was already walking down the hallway, following the school map she had memorized from their website. Collins hurried after her, shooting panicked looks at his secretary. Room 214 was in the middle of Ms. Greene's morning math lesson. She was at the whiteboard, explaining fractions, when the door opened. The entire class went silent as General Naomi Parker stepped into the room. Ms. Greene turned, her marker hovering mid-equation. We weren't expecting visitors." "Good," Naomi said, her eyes sweeping the classroom until they landed on Eli. His desk was in the back corner, separated from the other students by several empty seats. "I prefer unfiltered environments." Eli's eyes went wide. He sat up straighter, automatically, muscle memory from a lifetime of military discipline. Naomi gave him the slightest nod, barely perceptible to anyone else. "At ease, soldier," she said quietly, and the entire class seemed to hold its breath. "Class, this is," Ms. Greene began. "I know who you are, Ms. Greene," Naomi interrupted smoothly. "I've read quite a lot about you in recent weeks. Your emails have been very illuminating." Ms. Greene's face drained of color. Naomi walked slowly through the classroom, her gaze taking in everything. The seating arrangement, the lack of Eli's work on the display board despite his excellent grades, the way other students shifted uncomfortably in their seats. She stopped at Eli's desk. "May I see your recent assignments?" she asked him. Eli pulled out his folder with trembling hands. Naomi flipped through it methodically, noting the perfect scores marked with comments like check for accuracy and overly detailed. She saw the extra assignment Ms. Greene had given him as punishment for finishing early. Her jaw tightened, but her expression remained neutral. "Thank you," she said to Eli, then turned to Ms. Greene. "I'd like to see the classroom gradebook and Eli's file. Now, please." "I don't think I have the authority to," Ms. Greene started. "Then find someone who does," Naomi said, her voice dropping to a dangerous quiet. "Principal Collins, I believe you have access to these records." Collins, who had been hovering in the doorway, jumped. "Yes, of course. We can review everything in my office. Excellent. Let's go. As she turned to leave, Connor raised his hand. Ma'am, are you really a general? Naomi looked at him, and something in her gaze made him shrink back slightly. I am. And in my experience, real strength isn't about making others feel small. It's about lifting them up. Remember that. The walk to the principal's office was silent except for the click of Naomi's shoes on the tile floor. Once inside, she didn't wait for an invitation to sit. She placed her briefcase on Collins's desk and opened it, pulling out a thick folder. I've done my homework, she said, spreading papers across his desk. Incident reports filed against my son. Emails from Ms. Greene describing him as disruptive and defiant. Disciplinary actions for finishing assignments early, for speaking politely, for existing while black in your school. Now wait just a minute, Collins started. I'm not finished. Naomi's voice cut through his protest like a blade. I also have witness statements from Mr. James Harlan, your custodian. Testimony from Sophia Reyes, another student. And surveillance footage that I obtained through proper military channels showing my son being publicly humiliated at your field day event while staff members stood by and watched. She pulled out her phone and played a video. Ms. Greene's voice came through clearly. You're disrespectful. Stand here. Don't move. Don't speak. Collins's face went from red to pale in seconds. There's more, Naomi continued. I've documented a pattern of bias, not just against my son, but against other minority students at this school. Sophia Reyes was told not to speak Spanish during lunch. Marcus Thompson was suspended for aggressive behavior that amounted to defending himself against racial slurs. Should I continue? General Parker, I assure you. Let me tell you what's going to happen now, Naomi said, standing to her full height. You're going to call an emergency meeting with the superintendent. You're going to review every incident report, every email, every piece of evidence I've compiled. And you're going to start asking yourself some very hard questions about the culture you've allowed to flourish in this building. She leaned forward, her hands on his desk, her 4 stars catching the light. You teach children about leadership, about respect, about authority. But you've shown them cowardice. You've taught them that power means crushing those who can't fight back. Today, you're learning a different lesson, accountability. At that moment, Naomi's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and allowed herself a small, grim smile. And it appears that lesson is about to become very public. Sophia had made her decision during first period. She had watched General Parker walk into Ms. Greene's classroom like an avenging angel, and something inside her had snapped into place. This was the moment. This was when silence became complicity. She pulled out her phone, loaded the video from field day, and uploaded it to every social media platform she had. The caption was simple. This is what they do to military kids at Oak Ridge Middle School. This is Eli Parker. This is wrong. Hashtag Justice for Eli. Hashtag General Parker. Within minutes, the video started spreading. Students shared it. Parents saw it and shared it further. Local news outlets picked it up. By the time Principal Collins's phone started buzzing with incoming calls, the video had been viewed over 10,000 times. What is? Collins looked at his screen in horror as notification after notification appeared. Naomi watched him with calm satisfaction. That would be the truth, Mr. Collins. You should answer those calls. I believe several of them are from reporters. In the hallway outside, students had gathered, whispering and pointing at their phones. Teachers huddled together, some looking guilty, others defensive. The entire school ecosystem was shifting in real time. Ms. Greene appeared in the doorway, her face blotchy with tears and anger. My career is being destroyed over a misunderstanding. Naomi turned to face her, and the look in her eyes made Ms. Greene take a step back. It's not a misunderstanding when it's a pattern. It's not a mistake when it's a choice. You chose to humiliate a child. You chose to punish him for being excellent, for being different, for reminding you of your own inadequacies. And now you're facing the consequences of those choices. I didn't do anything wrong. Ms. Greene's voice rose to a near shriek. You did everything wrong, Naomi said quietly. And the saddest part is, you still don't see it. By the end of the school day, the parking lot was filled with news vans. Reporters called out questions as Naomi emerged from the building with Eli walking beside her, his head held high. "General Parker, will you be filing a lawsuit? Are you satisfied with the school's response? What message do you have for other military families?" Naomi stopped, turned to face the cameras, and spoke clearly. "I came here as a mother, not as a general. But both roles have taught me the same lesson. You fight for what's right, you protect those who cannot protect themselves, and you never, ever accept cruelty as the norm. My son stood tall through weeks of bullying and systematic prejudice. Now it's time for this school to stand tall and face what they've allowed to happen." She placed a hand on Eli's shoulder. "You did good, soldier. Now let me handle the rest." As they walked to the SUV inside the building, Ms. Greene sat alone in the empty classroom, her phone buzzing incessantly with angry messages and calls. Principal Collins was in his office, listening to the superintendent's cold, clipped voice explaining exactly how much trouble he was in. The storm had arrived, and nothing would ever be the same. The video of Ms. Greene yelling at Eli during field day exploded across social media overnight. What started as Sophia's act of courage became a movement by morning. Parents tagged the school district, local news stations picked up the story, and by dawn, hashtags like #JusticeEli and #GeneralParker were trending throughout the county. At home, Naomi sat at the kitchen table with her laptop open, monitoring the coverage with the strategic eye of a military commander. Local news channels were running segments. Parent groups were demanding answers. The school district's social media pages were flooded with comments, each one angrier than the last. Eli walked into the kitchen, still in his pajamas, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Mom, what's happening?" Naomi turned the laptop toward him. "The truth is happening, baby. People are seeing what you went through." Eli watched a few seconds of the video, seeing himself standing alone in that field, Ms. Greene's voice sharp with cruelty. His stomach twisted. "I didn't want this. I didn't want people to get fired." Naomi closed the laptop and pulled him into a chair beside her. "Listen to me carefully. This isn't about revenge. This isn't about anger. This is about truth and accountability. You asked to be treated fairly. That's all. What happens to Ms. Greene and Principal Collins is a consequence of their own choices, not yours. But what if, Eli?" Her voice was gentle but firm. "Justice isn't cruelty. It's balance. They had power and they abused it. Now, they face the natural consequences of that abuse. You did nothing wrong by standing up for yourself. You did nothing wrong by being who you are." He nodded slowly, processing her words. "It just feels weird. Everyone's talking about me now. I know, and that's uncomfortable. But sometimes light is the best disinfectant. Darkness let this happen. Light will help fix it." Across town, Principal Collins was already in his office at 6 in the morning, fielding calls from furious parents and the superintendent. His hand shook as he answered yet another angry voicemail. "This is unacceptable." The superintendent's voice crackled through the speaker. "I've got the school board breathing down my neck, parents threatening lawsuits, and the media camping outside the district office. How did you let it get this bad, Collins? I didn't know the extent of. You should have known. That's your job. We're scheduling an emergency review board for Friday morning. 9 sharp. You, Ms. Greene, and anyone else involved in this situation will be there to answer questions. And Collins? Bring your union rep. We're going to need them." The line went dead. Collins slumped in his chair, staring at his computer screen where email after email demanded his resignation. His career, built over 20 years, was crumbling in real time. Down the hall, Ms. Greene sat in her empty classroom, scrolling through her phone with trembling hands. Her name was everywhere. The video had been viewed hundreds of thousands of times. Comments ranged from outrage to downright vicious. Child abuser. Racist teacher exposed. She should never be allowed near kids again. Her breathing came in short gasps. This couldn't be happening. She had just been maintaining order, establishing discipline. Eli had been difficult, defiant. Why couldn't anyone see that? She opened her contacts and dialed the local news station that had reached out. If she could just explain her side, make people understand that she was the victim here, maybe she could salvage something. 20 minutes later, she was sitting in front of a camera, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, trying to maintain composure. "Ms. Greene, thank you for agreeing to speak with us," the reporter began. "Can you tell us your perspective on what happened with Eli Parker?" "He was a difficult student," she said, her voice wavering slightly. "He had behavioral issues, problems with authority. I was trying to help him learn structure and discipline. But witnesses say he was polite, respectful, and academically excellent. Well, yes, on the surface. But there was an underlying defiance, a refusal to integrate with the other students. Is it true you repeatedly mispronounced his name despite corrections?" Ms. Greene's face flushed. "Names can be challenging. I did my best." "Parker?" The reporter's eyebrow raised. "You found Parker challenging to pronounce?" It was a misunderstanding. Ms. Greene, we've obtained records showing you've had multiple complaints filed against you by families of minority students over the past 5 years. Parents of Marcus Thompson, Sophia Reyes, and 3 others all reported similar patterns of behavior. Would you like to comment on that?" Ms. Greene's face went from red to white. I don't know what you're talking about. Those were all misunderstandings. These parents, they're too sensitive. They see racism where there isn't any." She stopped, realizing too late how her words sounded. The reporter's expression remained neutral, but the damage was done. "Thank you for your time, Ms. Greene." The interview aired that evening. Within an hour, it had been clipped, shared, and dissected across every platform. If the original video had been damaging, her own words sealed her fate. School board members began receiving calls demanding not just her suspension, but her termination and the revocation of her teaching license. At Oak Ridge Middle School, the student body was fractured. Some students, mostly Connor's friends and their social circle, defended the teachers, claiming everyone was overreacting. But others, emboldened by Sophia's courage, began speaking up about their own experiences. Sophia found herself at the center of an unexpected movement. Students approached her in hallways, sharing stories of discrimination they had witnessed or experienced. She started a group chat, collected testimonies, and within days had compiled dozens of incidents that painted a troubling picture of the school's culture. One afternoon, she arrived at school with a stack of posters she had printed at home. Bold letters declared, "Respect is not a favor." She began taping them to lockers, bulletin boards, and classroom doors. Other students joined her, and soon the message was everywhere. A teacher tried to take one down. "You can't post these without permission." "Why not?" Sophia challenged. "Is respect controversial here?" The teacher hesitated, then walked away without removing the poster. At home that evening, Eli received a phone call from Mr. Harlan. "Just wanted to check on you, son," the old Marine said. "Seeing all this coverage, want to make sure you're holding up okay." "I'm okay, Mr. Harlan. Thank you. And thank you for what you did for reaching out to my mom. I just did what was right. Been watching cowards my whole life. Figured it was time to stand up to a few more." There was a pause. "You know, when I was your age, things were different, but also the same. Different uniforms on the bigotry, but same ugly heart underneath. What you're going through, what you're standing up against, it matters. Don't let anyone tell you different." "Yes, sir." "And Eli, your mama's one hell of a general, but she's an even better mother. You're lucky to have her." "I know, sir. I really do." That night, curled up on the couch with his mother, Eli finally broke down. The weight of everything crashed over him all at once. The isolation, the humiliation, the constant scrutiny, and now the overwhelming attention. "I just want to go to school," he sobbed into her shoulder. "I just want to make friends and learn and be normal." Naomi held him tight, her own eyes wet with tears she rarely allowed herself to shed. "I know, baby. I know. Did I do something wrong? Did I make them hate me?" "No." Her voice was fierce. "You did nothing wrong. You were yourself, and that was enough for them to target you. That's their failure, not yours. I just wanted to make you proud." Naomi pulled back, cupping his face in her hands. "Eli Marcus Parker, you listen to me. You already have. Every single day, you've made me proud. Not because you're perfect, but because you're strong. Not because you won, but because you kept standing when everything told you to fall. That's courage, baby. Real courage." He wiped his eyes. "I'm scared about the hearing. I know, but you won't be alone. I'll be right there with you. and so will everyone who believes in doing what's right. The school district's official email arrived Thursday evening, hitting every parent's inbox simultaneously. Emergency Public Disciplinary Hearing. Oak Ridge Middle School Staff Review. Friday, 9 a.m., District Office. Naomi read it, then walked to her closet where her dress uniform hung, freshly pressed and ready. She laced up her boots with military precision, each movement deliberate and controlled. Tomorrow wasn't just about Eli anymore. It was about every student who had ever been made to feel less than, every parent who had been dismissed, every complaint that had been ignored. Tomorrow, there would be accountability. Friday morning arrived with unseasonable cold, as if the weather itself sensed the gravity of what was about to unfold. A crowd had already gathered outside the school board office by 8:30, despite the hearing not starting until 9. Parents held signs, reporters jockeyed for position, and veterans in uniform stood in silent solidarity, their presence a powerful statement of support for one of their own. When General Naomi Parker's SUV pulled into the parking lot, the crowd parted respectfully. She stepped out in her full dress uniform, medals catching the morning light, her bearing that of someone who had commanded troops in combat zones and wasn't intimidated by a suburban school board. Eli walked beside her, wearing his best clothes, his posture straight despite the nervousness evident in his eyes. Sophia and her parents waited near the entrance. Her mother embraced Naomi briefly. "Thank you for doing this. Not just for Eli, but for all our children. We do this together," Naomi replied. "Your daughter's courage made this possible." Inside, the hearing room was already packed. Board members sat at a long table at the front, their expressions ranging from concern to uncomfortable. Principal Collins occupied a chair on one side, his union representative beside him. Ms. Greene sat alone on the other, her face pale and drawn. The superintendent, Dr. Margaret Hayes, a stern woman in her 60s, called the room to order. "This emergency hearing has been convened to address serious allegations of discrimination, bullying, and administrative negligence at Oak Ridge Middle School. We will hear testimony from all involved parties, review evidence, and make determinations regarding appropriate disciplinary action." She looked directly at Naomi. "General Parker, thank you for bringing these matters to our attention. You have the floor." Naomi stood, her presence commanding immediate attention. "Thank you, Dr. Hayes. Let me begin by establishing a timeline." She pulled out her folder and distributed packets to each board member. "September 15th, my son Eli Parker enrolled at Oak Ridge Middle School. Within hours, his homeroom teacher, Ms. Greene, began mispronouncing his name despite multiple corrections. Documentation shows she wrote his name correctly on all official paperwork, indicating this was a deliberate choice, not an error." Ms. Greene shifted uncomfortably in her seat. October 3rd, Eli was assigned extra work as punishment for completing an assignment early and correctly. October 17th, he was excluded from a group project by his assigned partners, then blamed when the project received a poor grade. October 24th, his locker was vandalized with military slurs, which Ms. Greene suggested he had done himself for attention. The board members flipped through the documentation, their frowns deepening. November 7th, during a school field day event, Eli was the only student assigned to clean up duty rather than participation. When he was physically mocked by other students, causing him to stumble and accidentally spill water bottles, Ms. Greene publicly humiliated him by forcing him to stand alone in the sun for 90 minutes as punishment. Naomi pressed play on a tablet, and the video filled the room with sound. Ms. Greene's voice, sharp and cruel. "You're disrespectful. Stand here. Don't move. Don't speak." The room went silent as they watched Eli standing alone, students taking photos, teachers walking past without intervention. And throughout all of this, Naomi continued, her voice hardening. Principal Collins received multiple reports about these incidents. His response was to threaten my son with suspension for making waves and to tell him that fitting in was more important than standing up for himself. Principal Collins started to stand. "Now that's not entirely accurate." "Sit down, Mr. Collins," Dr. Hayes said sharply. "You'll have your turn." Naomi pulled out another document. I also have testimony from Mr. James Harlan, a custodian and Marine Corps veteran, who witnessed multiple incidents. From Sophia Reyes, who documented a pattern of discrimination. And from parents of at least 6 other minority students who filed complaints that were dismissed or ignored by the administration. She placed a final sheet on the table. This is surveillance footage timestamp data from the school security system, obtained through proper channels, showing staff members witnessing bullying incidents and walking away. Showing Ms. Greene entering supply closets after assignments went missing from minority students' lockers. Showing a pattern of behavior that, at best, represents gross negligence and, at worst, represents systematic discrimination. The board members exchanged troubled glances. 1. A black woman named Mrs. Johnson leaned forward. Ms. Greene, would you like to respond to these allegations? Ms. Greene stood on shaking legs. I've been teaching for 17 years. I've never had problems like this before. Eli was defiant from day one. He wouldn't integrate, wouldn't adapt to our classroom culture. I was trying to help him. By mispronouncing his name? Mrs. Johnson asked. That was a misunderstanding. Parker is a misunderstanding. It's more complicated than that. It seems quite simple from where I'm sitting. Mrs. Johnson looked at her notes. You also gave an interview to Channel 7 News where you said, and I quote, "These parents are too sensitive. They see racism where there isn't any." Would you care to explain that statement? Ms. Greene's face crumbled. I was upset. I didn't mean, I'm not a racist. I've taught black students before. I've never had complaints. That's not true. Sophia's mother stood up, her voice strong. I filed a complaint 2 years ago when my daughter was told not to speak Spanish during lunch. I was told Sophia needed to better assimilate. When I protested, I was dismissed. Another parent stood. My son Marcus was suspended for 3 days for aggressive behavior when he defended himself against racial slurs. No one investigated the slurs. No one punished the students who attacked him verbally. Just my son, for standing up for himself. More parents rose, a wave of testimony that painted a devastating picture. The board members' expressions grew darker with each story. Finally, it was Eli's turn to speak. Naomi squeezed his shoulder as he stood, her silent support giving him strength. I'm not angry, Eli said quietly, his voice steady despite his trembling hands. I know Ms. Greene probably didn't wake up every day planning to hurt me, but she did hurt me. And when I tried to tell people, no one believed me. They said I was too sensitive, too difficult, too different. His voice cracked slightly. I just thought school was supposed to be safe. I thought teachers were supposed to protect us, not make us feel small. The silence that followed was profound. Even Ms. Greene was crying now, though whether from genuine remorse or self-pity was unclear. Principal Collins finally spoke, his frustration breaking through. We can't let these military parents think they own us. They come in here, making demands, acting like their children are special. The room erupted. Dr. Hayes banged her gavel. Mr. Collins, that statement will absolutely be included in the transcript. Collins seemed to realize his mistake too late. His union rep put her head in her hands. Naomi stood again, and the room fell silent. My son doesn't think he's special because I'm a general. He thinks he deserves basic human dignity because he's a human being. The fact that you can't see the difference is exactly why we're here today. She took a breath, her next words measured and powerful. You teach children to respect authority, but you've shown them that authority without accountability is just tyranny. You've taught them that power means crushing those who are different. My son salutes integrity, not fear. Perhaps it's time you learn that lesson before you ever stand before another student. The board members looked at each other, then Dr. Hayes spoke. We're going to deliberate. Everyone please wait outside. 20 minutes felt like hours. The crowd milled in the hallway. Veterans comparing notes, parents sharing stories, students clutching their phones nervously. Eli sat between his mother and Sophia, trying to steady his breathing. Finally, they were called back in. Dr. Hayes stood, her expression grave. After reviewing all evidence and testimony, this board has reached unanimous decisions. Ms. Greene, You are hereby suspended without pay pending a full investigation into multiple allegations of discrimination and misconduct. We are recommending the revocation of your teaching license." Ms. Greene let out a strangled sob. "Principal Collins, you were suspended immediately for failure to protect students under your care, for administrative negligence, and for demonstrating bias that compromised your ability to lead. The district will be conducting a comprehensive review of all disciplinary actions taken during your tenure." Collins sat frozen, his face ashen. "Furthermore, we are implementing immediate reforms: mandatory bias training for all staff, an independent ethics oversight committee with parent representation, and a clear reporting structure for discrimination complaints that bypasses building administration." Dr. Hayes looked directly at Eli. "Mr. Parker, on behalf of this district, I apologize. You deserve better. You deserve safety, respect, and fairness. We failed you. We will do better." The room erupted in applause. Naomi remained still, her hand on Eli's shoulder, her expression one of solemn satisfaction rather than triumph. Outside, reporters swarmed them immediately. "General Parker, are you satisfied with the outcome?" Naomi faced the cameras directly. "I came here as a mother, not a general. But both roles have taught me the same thing. You fight harder for those who cannot fight for themselves. Mothers fight harder than anyone. Today, truth won. That's what matters." She walked away with Eli, Sophia, and their supporters following. Behind them, in the now empty hearing room, Ms. Greene sobbed into her hands while her phone buzzed endlessly with angry messages. Principal Collins sat alone, staring at nothing, realizing his 20-year career was over. The storm had delivered its judgment, and justice, finally, had been served. The weeks following the hearing transformed Oak Ridge Middle School in ways both visible and subtle. The hallways felt different now, as if the building itself had exhaled after holding its breath for too long. But for Eli, the attention that came with being vindicated brought its own complications. Students he had never spoken to approached him in hallways, wanting to hear his story, to tell him he was brave, to take selfies with him. Teachers who had previously ignored him now smiled too brightly, spoke too carefully, treating him like fragile glass rather than a regular student. Even the cafeteria ladies gave him extra helpings and sympathetic looks. "I didn't do anything brave," Eli told Sophia one afternoon as they sat in the library. "I just wanted them to stop." Sophia looked up from her homework. "You didn't back down. That's brave enough. Most people would have just transferred schools or stayed silent forever. I had my mom. Not everyone has that." "True, but you also had yourself. You kept your composure when they were trying to break you. That matters." Eli wasn't sure he believed her, but he appreciated the effort. The truth was, he felt exhausted. The constant attention, the whispers, the way Connor and his friends now avoided him entirely, treating him like a landmine they might accidentally trigger. He had wanted justice, but he hadn't considered how lonely it might feel afterward. The district had moved quickly on its promised reforms. Mandatory bias training sessions were scheduled for all staff, facilitated by experts from a civil rights organization. An ethics oversight committee had been formed, composed of parents, community leaders, and even 2 student representatives. Sophia had been elected as one of them, her courage during the crisis making her a natural choice. "First meeting is next week," she told Eli excitedly. "We're going to review the discipline data from the past 5 years. See if there are patterns we missed before." "That's good," Eli said, and he meant it. But part of him just wanted things to feel normal again. The announcement that most surprised everyone came 3 weeks after the hearing. The district had hired a new principal to replace Collins, Dr. Angela Williams, a Black woman, an Air Force veteran who had spent the previous decade transforming struggling schools in urban districts. Her first day arrived with a mix of curiosity and apprehension from the staff. Dr. Williams stood in the main hallway during morning arrival, greeting every single student by name. She had somehow memorized the entire roster before her first day, and she used that knowledge with precision. "Good morning, Connor. How's soccer season going?" "Morning, Sophia. Congratulations on your committee position." "Eli Parker. It's an honor to meet you." Your mother spoke highly of your character. Eli stopped, surprised. You spoke to my mom? I did. Before I accepted this position, I wanted to understand what happened here and what needed to change. Your mother was very helpful. So was Mr. Harlan. She smiled warmly. My door is always open if you need anything. And I mean that literally. I keep it propped open during school hours. As she walked away to greet more students, Eli felt something shift inside him. Maybe things really could be different. The school also implemented a new program called Voices, a weekly assembly where students could share experiences, discuss challenges, and build community. The first session was awkward, with students uncertain about how honest they could be. But Sophia stood up and broke the ice. 2 years ago, a teacher told me I couldn't speak Spanish during lunch, she said, her voice steady. When I tried to explain that I was just talking to my friend, she said I needed to assimilate better. I felt ashamed of my language, of my culture, of myself. That wasn't okay then, and it's not okay now. Other students began sharing. A girl talked about being mocked for her accent. A boy described being followed in stores because of his skin color. The floodgates opened, and what emerged was a picture of shared pain that many had carried alone. Eli listened but didn't share. He wasn't ready yet, but he appreciated that the space existed. One evening in early December, there was a knock on Naomi's front door. She opened it to find Ms. Greene standing on the porch, looking 20 years older than she had just months before. Her hair was unkempt, her eyes red-rimmed, and she clutched a handwritten letter like a lifeline. General Parker, she said, her voice hoarse. I know I have no right to be here, but I need to say something, and I couldn't do it over the phone or in an email. I needed to face you. Naomi's expression remained neutral. I'm listening. I lost everything. My teaching license, my career, my reputation. For weeks, I blamed everyone but myself. Blamed you, blamed Eli, blamed the media. I was so angry. Her voice cracked. But then I started therapy, really looking at my behavior, and I realized something terrible. I became exactly what I swore I'd never be. She held out the letter. This is an apology to Eli. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted him to know that I finally see what I did. The pain I caused. The bias I refused to acknowledge. Tears streamed down her face. I told myself I wasn't racist because I didn't use slurs or burn crosses. But I was cruel. I was small. I used my power to hurt a child who did nothing wrong except remind me of my own inadequacies. Naomi took the letter slowly. Why are you really here, Ms. Greene? Because I want to be better. I'm volunteering at an after-school literacy program for military kids. Not to rebuild my reputation. Not to get my job back. But because I need to do something right after doing so much wrong. She met Naomi's eyes. I can't undo what I did. But maybe I can make sure I never do it again. Naomi studied her for a long moment. Accountability starts with truth. You're beginning to tell the truth. That's a start. But redemption isn't something you achieve. It's something you live every day through your choices. I know. I'll give Eli your letter. What he does with it is his choice. After Ms. Greene left, Naomi sat at the kitchen table with the letter unopened. When Eli came downstairs for a snack, she slid it across to him. Ms. Greene was here. She brought this for you. Eli stared at the envelope like it might bite him. What does it say? I don't know. I didn't read it. It's addressed to you. He picked it up, feeling the weight of it. Do I have to read it? No. You don't owe her anything. Not forgiveness. Not acknowledgement. Not closure. This is for you, not for her. Eli took the letter to his room and sat on his bed for a long time before opening it. The words inside were raw, painful, and honest. Ms. Greene didn't make excuses or minimize her actions. She simply acknowledged what she had done and why it was wrong. He read it twice, then folded it carefully and put it in his desk drawer. He wasn't ready to forgive, maybe never would be, but he appreciated the honesty. It was more than she had given him when it mattered most. Meanwhile, Principal Collins had taken a different path. He gave an interview to a sympathetic podcaster, framing himself as a victim of political correctness and overreaction. He claimed he had been trying to maintain order in a difficult environment, and that General Parker had used her military influence to destroy his career unfairly. The interview backfired spectacularly. Parents flooded social media with receipts. His ignored complaints, his dismissive emails, his pattern of protecting teachers over students. Within days, even the podcaster issued an apology for giving him a platform. Collins disappeared from public view after that, his reputation in ruins, his career over. Unlike Ms. Greene, he never took responsibility. He never apologized. He simply faded into bitterness and obscurity. In January, Eli surprised everyone by joining the school debate club. When Sophia asked why, he explained simply, "I want to learn how to use my voice before someone else uses it for me." His first debate was rough. He stumbled over his opening statement, forgot his rebuttals, and lost decisively. But he didn't quit. He practiced, studied, and improved. By February, he won his first debate on the topic of school discipline reform. The applause felt different from the attention he had received after the hearing. This was earned through effort, not trauma. One afternoon in late February, the school held a special assembly. Dr. Williams announced a new recognition, the James Harlan Service Award, honoring staff members who demonstrated moral courage and advocacy for students. The first recipient was, naturally, Mr. Harlan himself. The elderly veteran walked slowly to the stage, using a cane he hadn't needed months before. Eli presented him with a plaque that read, "For courage without rank." Mr. Harlan's eyes glistened as he accepted it. "I didn't do anything special," he said into the microphone. "I just remembered what my uniform meant. Not the Marines, but the uniform we all wear when we work with children. The responsibility to protect them, even when it's uncomfortable." He looked directly at Eli. "This young man taught me something. He showed me that courage isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's just standing tall when everyone else sits down." The auditorium erupted in applause. Naomi, sitting in the audience in civilian clothes, wiped tears from her eyes. That same week, Sophia won a district-wide essay contest on the theme, "The Price of Silence." Her essay detailed her journey from silent witness to active advocate, examining how complicity enables injustice. Her closing line resonated with readers across the district. Justice doesn't always wear a badge. Sometimes it wears a school uniform, carries a backpack, and refuses to be silent anymore. She was invited to read her essay at the district's annual leadership conference. Eli sat in the front row, proud of his friend who had risked so much to stand beside him. In March, Naomi received orders for her next assignment, a promotion to her new command position. The ceremony would be held in April at the base, and Eli would attend in his ROTC cadet uniform. She had earned her 4th star years ago, but this promotion represented a new level of responsibility and recognition. The night before the ceremony, Eli found her in the living room, polishing her dress shoes with the same precision she applied to everything. "Mom," he said quietly, "can I tell you something? Always. I used to think courage was loud, like soldiers charging into battle or people giving big speeches. But watching you handle everything with the school, the way you stayed calm and focused, the way you used evidence instead of emotion." He paused, searching for words. "I didn't think quiet could be that powerful." Naomi set down her polishing cloth and looked at her son. "You know what? I learned the same thing from you. Watching you stand tall through weeks of cruelty, never lashing out, never breaking your bearing. That's the kind of courage they don't teach in military academies. That's the kind you're born with." She pulled him into a hug. "I'm proud of you, soldier. Always have been, always will be." Later that night, Eli went to his corkboard where he had pinned various mementos from the year. His mother's old challenge coin sat in the center, surrounded by Sophia's printed essay, a photo from the debate club, Mr. Harlan's personal note thanking him for his strength, and a newspaper clipping about the school reforms. He added one more item, a small card from Dr. Williams that read, "Leadership isn't about being perfect. It's about being present. Above it all," he wrote in careful letters, "things worth fighting for." Spring arrived at Oak Ridge Middle School with the soft promise of new beginnings. The cherry trees lining the front walk bloomed pink and white, and students gathered beneath them during lunch, their laughter no longer carrying the edge of cruelty that had defined the previous semester. The transformation wasn't complete. Real change never happened overnight, but it was undeniable. The graduation ceremony was scheduled for late May, and the entire 8th grade buzzed with anticipation. Eli had made it through the year, not just survived, but grown. His grades remained excellent. He had friends beyond just Sophia, and he no longer tensed every time a teacher called his name. On graduation day, the gymnasium was decorated with blue and gold banners, rows of folding chairs facing a simple stage. Parents filled the bleachers, cameras ready, pride evident on their faces. Eli sat with his class, his burgundy graduation gown feeling strange and official. Nervous? Sophia whispered beside him. A little. You. Terrified. I hate public speaking, says the girl who read her essay to 300 people. She laughed. That was different. That was important. The ceremony began with the usual speeches from the school board and Dr. Williams. But then came an unexpected announcement. Before we present diplomas, Dr. Williams said, her voice carrying across the gymnasium, we have a special guest. Someone who reminds us that leadership takes many forms and that sometimes the strongest warriors fight battles we never see. Please welcome Lieutenant General Naomi Parker. The audience rose in a standing ovation as Naomi walked across the stage in her dress uniform, her 4-star newly pinned and gleaming. Eli's breath caught in his throat. She hadn't told him she was speaking. Naomi stood at the podium, waiting for the applause to fade. When she spoke, her voice was strong but warm. Thank you. I'm honored to be here today, though I'll admit, when Dr. Williams invited me, I was hesitant. I'm a soldier, not an educator. I command troops, not classrooms. She paused, a slight smile playing at her lips. But then I realized something. Leadership isn't about where you serve. It's about what you do when no one's watching. It's about the choices you make when doing the right thing costs you something. She looked directly at the graduating class. Many of you know my son, Eli. Some of you were kind to him during a difficult time. Some of you weren't. Some of you stood by silently, unsure what to do. All of those responses are human. All of them are understandable. But here's what I want you to remember as you leave this place and enter the next chapter of your lives. She leaned forward slightly, her presence commanding. Your character isn't defined by your comfort. It's defined by your choices when things get hard. When you see someone being treated unfairly, you have options. You can participate in the cruelty, you can ignore it, or you can stand against it. Each choice has consequences. Each choice reveals who you are. Her gaze swept the room. My son chose to stand tall when everything told him to bow down. He reminded me that courage doesn't always announce itself with trumpets and fanfare. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's just showing up every day and refusing to become bitter, refusing to let cruelty change who you are at your core. She smiled softly. As you graduate today, you're being told you're the future. That's true, but you're also the present. The person you're becoming starts now, with the small choices you make today. Be the person who stands up. Be the person who speaks out. Be the person who remembers that respect isn't a favor we grant to those we deem worthy. It's a baseline we extend to everyone. The applause was thunderous. Students stood, parents cheered, and Eli wiped his eyes quickly, hoping no one noticed. When it came time to receive diplomas, each student's name was called with care and correct pronunciation. Dr. Williams made sure of it. When Eli Marcus Parker echoed through the gymnasium, the applause was deafening. He walked across the stage, shook Dr. Williams's hand, and took his diploma. As he turned to walk back to his seat, he caught his mother's eye. She nodded once, a small gesture that meant everything. He had done it. They had done it together. After the ceremony, as families milled around taking photos, Eli spotted a new student standing alone near the water fountain. The boy looked nervous, overwhelmed by the chaos and celebration happening around him. His dark skin stood out among the mostly white crowd, and he held himself with a careful stillness that Eli recognized immediately. Without hesitation, Eli walked over and put a hand on the boy's shoulder. Hey, I'm Millie. You new here? The boy nodded, relief flooding his face. Yeah, My dad just got stationed at the base. I'm Marcus. I start in the fall. Marcus. Good name. Come sit with us. My friend Sophia and I were just about to get some punch. As they walked toward the refreshment table, Sophia joined them, immediately welcoming Marcus with her easy warmth. Eli caught his mother watching from across the room, and she smiled. Full circle. The lesson passed forward. Across town, in a small community center, Ms. Greene sat with a group of children, helping them sound out words in picture books. The after-school literacy program served primarily military families, many of them struggling with frequent moves and inconsistent schooling. The work was humbling, often frustrating, but genuine. A little girl with braids looked up at her. Ms. Laura, is this word friend? She had started using her middle name, a small way of marking the before and after of her life. Yes, sweetheart. That's exactly right. Friend. The girl beamed. Ms. Greene felt something crack open in her chest, something that had been frozen for a long time. She would never teach in a public school again. Her license was revoked, her career over. But maybe, in this small way, she could do something that mattered. Something right. She pulled out her phone during her break and saw the news alert. General Parker promoted to senior command position. She read the article, saw the photo of Naomi with Eli beside her in his cadet uniform, and felt the weight of what she had almost destroyed. She typed a text she would never send. I'm sorry will never be enough, but I'm trying to be better. Then she deleted it and went back to help the next child with their reading. Meanwhile, in an apartment on the other side of town, former Principal Collins scrolled through job listings with growing desperation. School districts weren't calling back. His reputation preceded him. The interview he had given, blaming everyone but himself, had sealed his fate. His wife had left him 3 months ago. His friends had stopped returning calls. He was alone with his bitterness, unable to see that his downfall had been his own creation. He refreshed his email for the 100th time that day, hoping for a response that would never come. Some people learned from their mistakes. Others simply learned to resent the consequences. Back at the graduation reception, Mr. Harlan found Eli near the cake table. Congratulations, son. You made it through. Thanks to you, sir. If you hadn't reached out to my mom, you would have kept standing anyway, Mr. Harlan interrupted gently. I just made sure someone with power knew what kind of courage you were showing. But the courage itself? That was all you. They stood together, watching the celebration, 2 generations of people who understood what it meant to stand firm under pressure. What's next for you? Mr. Harlan asked. High school, then maybe college. Mom wants me to consider a service academy, but I'm not sure yet. You've got time to figure out. Just remember what you learned here. The world needs people who won't bow down to bullies, who won't stay silent when they see wrong. Whether you wear a uniform or not, that's the person you already are. That evening, at home, Naomi and Eli sat on the back porch watching the sun set. Her uniform jacket hung on a chair, the 4th star catching the golden light. His graduation gown lay folded beside it, a different kind of uniform, but equally symbolic. You know what I'm proudest of? Naomi asked. What? Not that you survived, not that we won, but that you came out of this still kind, still willing to help that new student today, still believing in fairness and justice, even after seeing how unfair the world can be. She put an arm around his shoulders. That's strength, baby. Real strength. Eli leaned against her. I had a good teacher. They sat in comfortable silence as night fell, 2 soldiers resting after battle. Inside the house, on Eli's corkboard, his collection of mementos told a story of pain transformed into purpose. His mother's old challenge coin sat in the center, a reminder of where he came from. But beside it now was his graduation tassel, a symbol of where he was going. The next morning, Eli found an envelope on the kitchen table addressed to him. Inside was a new challenge coin, freshly minted, with his name engraved on one side. On the other side, 3 words, stand tall. Always. A note from his mother accompanied it. You've earned your own now. Pass it forward when the time comes. Eli held it in his palm, feeling its weight, understanding its meaning. This wasn't just about what he had survived. It was about what he would do with the lessons he had learned. The person he would choose to become. The courage he would show, not just for himself, but for others who would face their own battles. In the hallway, Naomi's uniform hung beside Eli's small ROTC cadet jacket. 2 generations, 2 sizes, one unbroken line of service and honor. The storms had passed. The battles had been fought. But the legacy, the real legacy, was just beginning. It lived in Marcus, the new student who would start school with someone looking out for him. It lived in Sophia, who had learned that her voice mattered. It lived in Dr. Williams, transforming a broken system one day at a time. It lived in Mr. Harlan's quiet dignity and Ms. Greene's painful redemption. And it lived in Eli Parker, who had learned that courage wasn't about being fearless. It was about being afraid and standing tall anyway. About being hurt and choosing not to hurt others in return. About winning but remaining humble. About power used not to dominate but to protect. As morning light filled the kitchen, Eli slipped the challenge coin into his pocket where it would stay, a reminder and a promise. Outside, the flag at Oak Ridge Middle School flew at full staff, catching the breeze. The building looked the same as it had months ago, but everything inside had changed. Sometimes justice takes time. Sometimes change comes slowly. But it comes carried forward by people brave enough to stand when others sit, to speak when others stay silent, to believe that things can and should be better. The storms fade. The flags rest still. But courage doesn't end on battlefields or in school hallways. It begins in hearts that refuse to bow, in voices that refuse to be silenced, in the quiet determination of people who simply will not give up. And that courage, passed from mother to son, from student to student, from generation to generation, that courage changes everything. When authority turns blind and power becomes cruelty, who will stand for those who cannot stand alone? If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that remind us why courage matters.